So, I'm finding myself struggling a lot with wide shots.
There a story?
Of course there's a story. That's how it begins. It's been a general issue of mine through like most of my...
No. Start with the story.
Start with the story. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I found a lot of the time that when I was shooting my short at uni, I focused a lot on medium shots and medium close-ups, and those are the ones that looked good. And the wide shots, most of the groups of people didn't look good at all, and that was either because I didn't know how to frame them, or because I wasn't entirely sure how to control the sun and the way that it landed on the subject. If it was outside, I felt very out of control, and I really don't think they're the best shots. And even as I started shooting indoors more often for the little sketches, I've still found that I feel out of control when I shoot a wide. I'm not entirely sure how to control the way the light falls on my subjects, the way that it moves through the room, how I should be even organizing that kind of thing. And this has come to a head because a music video that I'm shooting next month relies on a very, very wide shot that is held for a very, very long time in locations such as a pool, a book fair, someone's house. And I figured this was a very good time to ask you. This appears to be something that I've seen echoed by other students and other beginners, that wide shots are just generally not easy, especially establishing shots. So I've tried to nail this down to a bunch of smaller questions. How do I draw attention to my subjects in wides is a big issue of mine. What kind of equipment is necessary for this kind of thing? I realize that'll be a whole can of worms. How do I control space at that scale? Or at my scale of shooting, should I just relinquish that control and go with the flow or focus on framing more? What's the big idea with wides?
They're big.
That's all, guys. See you next week where we discuss mediums.
It needs to, everything scales. Everything needs to scale. I'm hearing potentially two separate questions.
Awesome.
One that maybe isn't asked, and one that probably do with being clarified. I want to do a little sidetrack. When we're not getting good answers, usually the reason is we're not asking good questions. I think this is something that we've found time and time again when it comes to like specific, how do I do X, Y, Z.
I think we've found over the course of this that whenever I ask a question that I think is like really well articulated, I'm like, what do you think of that? It turns out to be just like, help me. And that's the entire question. Question is wrong.
The unasked question, why wide shot?
Okay. Well, we've spoken about this before. I've noticed I'm very coverage focused now, so it could just be a symptom of me feeling obligated to shoot a wide shot because it is an inherent part of coverage. However, I could be, because you've mentioned the SMR, the single, the master, and the reverse. Is it possible that I'm relating masters to wides too much?
I don't think it's just you. I think it's in general.
Does a master need to be a wide, is what you're saying?
Well, there is that, but I think it's also, if you look at the way film grammar, as in the sequencing and rhythm, so to speak, of shot sizes, the cadence of shot sizes, we're seeing a move away in great parts from the traditional wide establishing. I think this is a trend we've seen going since the 90s, where we are seeing more and more scenes start in open, tight framings and then building out to reveal. You notice that?
Yeah.
Rather than starting wider and then like moving in.
I've never noticed a trend, but I've definitely noticed there's a lot more sort of like a high impact nothing transition. If you're not like, transition isn't like a wipe or anything fancy. Whenever I think someone wants something to be an impactful transition, it won't cut to a wide, it'll cut to a close up.
Right in the middle of some sort of action.
Kind of a Fincher thing.
And then we're like,
almost. Yeah. Oh, by the way, quick update. I have in fact watched more Fincher movies than Alien 3. I made a point of it over the past couple of weeks. I have not just watched Alien 3 now. Everyone can sleep peacefully. Everyone who cares, which is obviously every single person in the entire world.
The follow-on question is, how wide is the wide?
I was actually going to ask about that because I'm not entirely sure what... Obviously, the language is a bit messed up anyway because you'll have people calling them long shots as well. Like, I'll write WS in my shot list. Some people write LS. XLS.
To me, those are interchangeable.
Yeah, that's what I've found as well. I've developed a potentially bad habit of saying that, and it's actually a really bad habit. You won't like it. Where if I want to write that something is a particularly wide shot and it comes at the start of the shot list, I'll write EST as in establishing, as if an establishing shot is inherently extremely wide, which it obviously isn't. That's how I've done it. A wide shot can be basically anything that involves the entire body in my frame of reference, and normally when I write EST, it means very wide, mostly of a location, which is just not sustainable, in my opinion.
And that's where the question falls apart a little bit, because that's a big, big range.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're saying logistics and everything scales, then it's kind of going from, I agree, I would say that a wide shot is a head to toe with comfortable room, top and bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Wider than that is very wide or extra wide.
Extra
but
wide.
Then that's huge
Yeah.
range, right? So I think part of the question here, both in the general and in the explicit, i.e. for your... And when were you going to tell us about like a music video? Now that
it's been happening really slowly, and it's something that like we've been gradually assembling it. And whenever I'm gradually assembling something, I always feel hesitant to like signpost it, because when you gradually assemble something, there's a very good chance that it could just, hopefully it turns out well. I am looking forward to it. It's been the first thing that I shot that I was actually happy with was a music video, so I'm pretty excited to see if I can with the same team as well. So I want to see if I can replicate that satisfaction with myself, which is nice. Yeah, been on the back burner relative to everything else I've been making.
So I think we need to establish
thumbnail.
A few things. Yeah. How wide is wide, and why?
Yeah,
that
wide? That's actually a hidden question that you've dug out of me. I feel like a lot of your Vitruvian Man diagram, the absolutely wonderful yes, which you're wearing, excellent. Isn't that available on Redbubble?
It is. I know. Hit us up if you want to leave.
Buy Kim's merch. We already have merch. How good is that?
Because that sales pitch was not awkward at all.
Guys, can you please, would you mind...
I think we just move straight.
Like your Vitruvian Man, for example, is like my go-to shot size image. It's just like what I look at whenever I forget what shot sizes are, which obviously happens very rarely. Duh. I never forget what shot sizes are. But every reference image, including that one that I've ever seen, doesn't have much of an incremental how wide is wide. It's like every image that I've seen is like a wide is something, as you described, head to toe, comfortable space, top and bottom. And that's it. It's like that's where wide starts. Yeah, that's at least a wide. So, I don't know. When is a wide too wide to be a wide, do you think? Is a picture of the Earth a wide shot?
Yeah, I guess.
Ignore that.
There are two reasons I'm asking. One, it's purely practical, logistical, resource-wise, and the second one is kind of like a bounce back from that is what's the value of going as wide as...
I'll start with the technical stuff first. The wide that I'm after at the moment, please ignore you and I were talking about this before you started recording. I've got post-COVID facial hair. It's bad, but ignore it for now. I forgot that I have an entire screen at my disposal. RIP audio listeners. Sorry. Spotify has a video podcasting option, as you know. I think in the music video, like ideally there's our subject and the rest of the scene is...
But why?
I like the idea of... I'm just knocking around my entire setup today. I'm so sorry. I really like the idea of a wide being a large vignette, like a huge... The whole thing of the music video, no spoilers, is that our performers in the center of the screen, and then all this stuff happening around them. There's a guy chasing a chicken around in the background. There's someone being resuscitated at a pool. We thought that the idea of a big wide shot vignette of all those things happening would be very pleasing. It fit the sort of cutesy, eclectic... Gen Z language incoming. The cutesy, eclectic vibe of the music. Yeah. And it also posed a nice challenge for us. I think it was a nice, fresh idea that was not very close to what we've done in the past. It's appealing. It's appealing for those three reasons.
So I'm going to give you the Boomer Gen X standard answer. Have you tested? Is that your answer?
I actually just answered the question. My camera cut out while it was happening. I don't feel like that was the answer. I don't feel like answering it again. I don't know if I have the energy to say the answer again, but obviously you got it. Unless, of course, something crazy happened, like my camera cutting out when I said it. I haven't tested yet. is at the end.
Right, so this could be potentially episode ending.
An episode-ending disaster.
I'd like us to get more with these topics to a stage where you feel comfortable testing before you ask.
Oh, okay. That's a very good idea. I like that. I mean, that's a very good idea. I like that.
Now, to make this more practical, part of the reason why I'm pushing so hard on the why, so we've established how wide this wide is. I don't know that there is an accepted definition for this particular size, but I definitely see it and recognize it. I know what that size is, if that makes sense. So we've established how wide is wide, and I can see the why. I follow those. My question is, with something that wide, do you have the resources, and I include knowledge, skill, and experience as resources?
That is one of my primary concerns, and I was going to approach you with that question, but the answer is, I decided not to because the answer is my own, which is, I don't know. I really just don't know. It's the resources, probably yes. I know that kind of thing will require a particularly large source, which I feel like with enough help from my pals, I can pull off. Hiding that source, putting it to the side or anything, and I'm not sure how that'll work out. I might put it behind the camera. I've got a few lights at my disposal, not only my own, but a couple ones from JMC that I can rent from them. I've got some gels. Lighting-wise, it will be a bit piecemeal? No. Lighting-wise, it'll be a bit scrappy, is that the word? Rough, but I feel like I can pull it off. Knowledge is something that I'm not sure about, because this kind of thing I did try to toss up, and I feel like this is the kind of shot people normally pull off with an elevated source. And by elevated, I mean on a crane or something with a lot of grips.
Let me outline why that size of shot becomes a bigger challenge. When I say things scale with increase in shot size, it doesn't scale linearly. It's way more exponential. What most people forget to take into account when they look at the logistics of a wider shot, they only think in 2 dimensions. They're not yet thinking logistically in 3 dimensions.
I am trying to think of the...
Yes. So can you see that means that it can't scale linearly? No. I would say in terms of the performer, actor, director's staging volume or staging floor area, any given space, it's probably a third of the total floor space.
So to pull this off properly, I would need to use 2/3 of the floor space?
No, this is just a rule of thumb. So obviously there are exceptions. But let's say, for example, that you've got a room that is... I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm actually going to do this in metric.
God forbid.
Let's say you got a room that is 6 meters by 10 meters. So that's 60 square meters. 1/3 of that is 20 square meters.
Yes. So I would just want to, for safety, assume that I'm working with 20 square meters for the performers and the director and everything.
20 square meters for where you can actually put actors and where the director can place actors. Now, in order to get those 20 square meters, we're looking at something very roughly like 4 meters by 5 meters.
Yeah, which
4 times 5 is 20, right?
What?
If we very roughly, then we're going to say we use half the length, so half the 10 meters, and only 2/3 of the width of the 6 meters. Now, if we really want to dig it, I'd like to have more space. So on the 6 meter dimension, I'm going to use less than the 4 meters. And maybe a little bit more of the 10 meters. But when you scale up, then you also need to scale up the size in front of the staging area and where a lot of people forget about. So you need to scale up.
Vertically.
Yeah. Think about it. If you've got the same down angle of light fixture of sources, if you want to maintain that angle,
you're going up.
And you need to move the source back, you also need to go up. And that's the one that really feel like it, like that scales linearly, but it doesn't feel like it's...
Yeah, because it's like a couple meters is the difference between maybe a kind of wonky, shitty rigged C-stand setup and a crane. Very interesting. I will test this, by the way. I want to talk about the idea of me coming to you with tested material prior to harassing you with a question is one that I'm going to be so honest I did not think of for some reason. I'm just a real silly Billy in that regard. I'm actually very excited to give that a go. I will test it outside, methinks, as well as the largest environment I can find where I won't look like an insane person testing it out. I'll give myself like a basic visual reference for how I want to look in the frame, like what size I want to be and where I'm placed. Take a photo and then mark out the distance from either side of myself as well as the back and front of the image that is just leaving the frame, maybe. See if that works.
Well, then this is one like where you can test in iterations and scales. Unlike this one could be extremely fruitful to test on doll scale first.
Yeah, haven't done some doll work in a while. What do you think of that phrase
Well,
there? What do you think of that isolated phrase I just let myself say?
it made me think of all work and no play makes Jack a doll.
A doll boy. I'm going to use that one in my next Instagram post and not credit you for it. It'll be like when something McDonald's founding story. That's
Where I think it's easy to fall apart is because we're not necessarily accounting for the increase in height to get the same tilt angle of a fixture. Lighting of these very wide shots can often end up being quite flat.
that was my concern as well. Like, I'm confident enough to know that I will at the very least, on like the human height plane, I'll be carefully supervising the lighting throughout the entire room to make sure that there's a bit of depth and separation. If I can, again, because I'm working with kind of small lights, honestly. That's something that I want to be aware of, but yeah, vertically, it will probably just end up looking kind of flat.
And the next area where things start getting exponentially more challenging is because you're increasing the distance of the sources, you also start fighting inverse square law. Now, what time of day do these need to be?
I actually don't know. It's happening in about 3 weeks, so I'm not sure. The first lady hasn't made a schedule yet. The assumption is that they're all mostly going to be midday or afternoon.
Have you scouted?
Yes, a few of the locations.
Have you scouted with Sunseeker?
Yes, I have. Where's my telephone? Where's my telephone device? Squalor, I tell you. Can we entitle this episode
Gen Z? The entitled ones?
All right. Can we title this episode the one where Ethan has to crawl back to his director friend and tell him he can't do a shot?
Yeah. So my advice would be generally to use the sun as backlight.
Backlight. Okay. That's good, because you'll be thrilled to hear that my primary discovery upon scouting... Will you see this? Come on, show up on the screen. Don't be shy. That window is south-facing, if I get my hemispheres correct, i.e. milkmaid light. Is that ideal or not ideal?
I'm getting confused. I thought this very wide shot was...
Yeah, that's a pool. It's not outside. It's an indoor pool.
Ah, okay.
But there are some outside. There's one in a backyard. There's one outside during like a book fair. Those are two that we haven't scouted yet. So it's going to be a bit problematic. But
yeah, and those would be the ones where I definitely want to pick apart of those areas that allow you to use the sun as a backlight.
I am going to harass Annabelle, producer, to get... what I'll do is I'll kill two birds with one stone. Try to, at least. I'll try to get some testing done when we scout those locations. Quite helpful. Which brings me to... Do you have any thoughts as to any outcomes I should be trying to get out of testing for this? Or... ... What should I be looking for when I test this sort of thing?
I'm debating with myself whether I'm going to approach this question genuinely or whether I'm going to be approaching it sarcastically.
I'm happy with sarcastically, personally, if that's your preference.
What's the purpose of testing?
Finding out what happens.
And why are you asking me what you should test when the tests are yours? As in, can you see what that question is kind of like putting me off a little bit? As in, like, what outcome should I expect?
Not what outcome should I expect, but like what...
Yeah. All right, so the helpful part, the genuinely answering the question part is, what's your vernacular?
Can you make that baby words for me so I can understand?
What style are you trying to achieve?
But of course, I will consult my director's mood board and have a squiz. This one.
I think in particular with that, how naturalistic versus how stylistic are you looking for?
The impression I get is I'm going for naturalistic, but you've just reminded me that I need to have a very in-depth meeting with the director about the look and reference images and the way that he wants it to appear.
I'm going to give you couple of projects of mine offline.
Oh, wow.
That you can go, like music videos, the shot all available, like sunlight.
Oh, yes. You've shown me the piano one with the rain and the huge white bounce.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, like outdoors, they're not.
The kind of big white bounce. The tiny white bounce. Poor thing.
Well, it's, again, like, when you scale it. Yep. Like those used for a big close-up, fairly, but they don't have a lot of throw.
Right.
And when you scale the full volume up, sideways, up, and in depth, then you need throw. Both of those examples, when you go and have a look at them, they were all made possible by careful scouting and with Sunseeker.
Yes, Sunseeker's been a very good friend.
So it is literally,
edit that out.
I'm not happy with this shot here right now, but I'm going to have to leave it because I need to be shooting in this direction with that cliff face in the background. Otherwise, the sun's going to have to move. Otherwise, the sun will move and I'll lose both of them.
Right.
That's how tight everything was, Matt.
Okay.
The piano and rain one was like we went to 3 locations and just stuck out. No, next.
Wow. Okay.
And same thing there. Ooh, like that's little. Like, can we get a shot of that? Like little wooden. Like no. So you want to scrap this one? Sure, we can do this one. Oh, fuck. Like when you don't have those resources,
you're just going and you're.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me that one of the hidden answers here is that when you don't have the resources, like me, you
like either you need to find a different
or
shot.
You compensate with tight scheduling and like extremely extreme coordination. Okay. Yeah.
And generally, I find that more of a Bob Richardson kind of approach is probably the easier way of going about it. So are we going to let Ethan suffer through this? Are we going to let Ethan kind of pretend that he doesn't know the Bob Richardson style?
I don't know the Bob Richardson style. I'm not acting. Please tell me.
Go Google some screenshots from
JFK,
Inglourious Bastards, Shutter Island, Bringing Out the Dead.
Okay. To word it like a Gen Z again, I am getting not much but a white bounce vibes from a few of these screenshots, but I could be completely wrong.
But also what makes the bounce work?
Is it the time of day? There's a lot of intense sunlight coming from one direction and they're bouncing that.
Or a 20k Fresnel or a 24k Fresnel.
Oh, so they're adding throw by pointing a light at it, like supplementing
but it's a hard backlight and front bounce.
Excellent. Okay. Inspiring, empowering.
However, it's a bit of a signature move.
Oh, really?
So there's huge limitations in how naturalistic.
Which again, I will discuss with the director.
Which again, like that question before, naturalistic versus stylistic. Sometimes, in terms of logistics or resources, sometimes, well, particularly for something like music video, you may not have a lot of a choice.
Yeah.
The other thing, in terms of things scaling, are you ready for a foot candle redo?
I'm really not, but go. It's been a mute while I drink some water.
Considering that I guess we're technically still in winter here, we aren't dealing with the full new summer noontime sun, but do you know what you're competing with foot candle-wise?
I really know. Yes. Of course I want to know.
Last time I measured direct noontime Australian summertime sun was 22,000 foot candles.
Oh, that's okay. The cameras we're shooting on have really good dynamic range. That's fine. That'll be just... No, I'm sure that could be. That's all good. I won't even bother with a bounce, actually. I think I might just shoot it raw like that. I won't even degrade it. I'll just keep it in log.
Your VL150... according to manufacturer spec, can put out about 4,000 foot candles at 1 meter.
Okay, so all I need is just to fix up the bounce a little bit. All I need is 5.5 of my lights 1 meter away from a bounce that is also somehow bouncing onto a subject and not just bouncing back into the lights. That sounds good. On it.
Now, do you remember the inverse square law? Means that every time you double the distance, you end up with 1/4 the output. So at 2 meters, at best, you're going to be getting 1,000 foot candles. In terms of the shot size, are you realistically going to be able to get that fixture even within the 2 meters?
And this is all before I've bounced it as well.
And that's why, you use the sun. That's why you use the sun as well.
Right, because the sun helps. I forgot about the giant orb in the sky.
But yeah, I think before you've actually tried it, it's quite a rude shock how little LED fixtures do in daylight.
Well, thank you for... One of the best things about this entire show is that you've managed to keep me away from a couple rude shocks, which has been nice.
So, since it's Flog Ethan Day...
It's always Flog Ethan Day. I am not... I need to be humbled every day.
Right. So, an 18,000 watt HMI which, by the way, is going to run you something in the region of 150,000 and requires industrial power supply
Ugh.
because you cannot, like, 2,400 watts is the max you get out of domestic household mains. To get 22,000 foot candles, you need to get as close as 2 meters.
I'd like to let you know this has been long time coming in the making, but I've decided that I want to be an author of novels.
All right. So the other weapon of choice on big production is a soft sun, which in its largest capacity is 100,000 watts.
Okay.
The globe is 9 foot wide.
The globe.
Yes.
So it's called a soft sun because it's like it's a sun.
Yeah. Now let's see if we can get up some photometrics on that.
Pull it up, Jamie.
And again, like that's a dedicated truck generator.
Yeah.
Well, this is promising. So 25 foot. So that's 7.6 meters.
Okay.
You are getting nearly 4,000.
Okay.
So in terms of using it as fill, that's
pretty good. So I'll just get one of these. How do I get my hands on these soft sun devices? Are they within the $100 range?
I think per minute. Sure.
Okay. I'll let the first AD know that we've got to do this minute by minute shooting schedule.
Well, I'm putting it out there just to give you a scale of, like, if you really do want to compete with and control and play in the same sandbox as the sun, that's the level.
I think you've just woken me up a little bit to how much prep I need to get back into. I feel like I've been doing a bit of low prep. I've been experimenting with a bit less. We've spoken about this. I've been experimenting with a bit less prep as I make things this year, and you've dragged me back into the real world by reminding me I need to, start collating this and preparing myself for the technical and stylistic challenges that will come with what we've decided to do, which has been quite nice, honestly.
The other thing you also want to keep in mind is, roughly speaking, at a 53-degree beam angle, your beam size equals your distance. In terms of how wide do you need your source to throw, you can also calculate then from that how far away do you need the source to be, and then from how far away you need your source to be, you can then count how much fall off will you be getting, right? As an extremely rough rule of thumb, your top LEDs, I take them as being 5 times more efficient per watt than a tungsten Fresnel. So your 150, the closest equivalent tungsten Fresnel is the 650 and Inky. So hopefully you've got the RE photometric app.
I do.
Start using that.
Okay. You've just changed. I'm gonna get some. I've asked for 300 watts out of habit, and I'm going to alter that now.
Then start thinking about.
Why do I have it?
If
I've got it twice. I have the app twice on my phone. I have 2 copies of the app on my phone. Double cinematography. Yeah. Well, I need to get a second phone for that one.
Start thinking about, like, let's say the area that you want to see. If we're talking your typical inner city Federation Terrace is going to be somewhere between 12 to 15 foot wide. Now your suburban could be as much as 20 foot, like significantly wider. So if you want to fill that with a single fixture, you would need the source 20 foot away, maybe even a bit more, because your reflector is probably far less than 53 degrees. It's probably more like 40.
So in order for it to properly spill out into the space, I would need to put it very far away, which would require a very powerful fixture.
Because of the inverse square law, and well, let's just see. Let's say, with your RF photometrics, you get your beam diameter, right? So if I go and dial in 20-foot beam diameter.
Which light do you recommend that did you say Inky?
The 650 plus.
Yes.
Right. So 20 foot, I'm going to need about 21 foot distance. So let's give ourselves, let's call it, 25 foot, at 20 foot.
25 foot beam diameter, you said?
20 foot beam diameter, right?
Oh, yeah.
That gives us a distance of 21-ish foot. So let's bump the distance up to 25 foot. So if I go to 25 foot distance, I'm left with 20 foot candles against the sun's 22,000.
Yeah, I've got no clue if I'm using this right, but I've got 24, which is not much of an improvement. I might actually ask the director and producer to watch this episode. Required viewing moving forward.
We get significantly less that we're fighting against if we're talking overcast.
Yeah, that's the thing. I've shot on a lot of overcast days, and it's very helpful. I don't know if overcast is what we want with this one, but the more you say, the more I think I'm not.
Can you order it on the day?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, do I even have, given the challenges of a sunny day, do I even have the right to be like, no, I don't want overcast? If overcast will make it a bit more simple. But then again, an overcast day has the potential to look a bit more flat. I'm feeling pretty answered at the moment. If you have any other thoughts, I've got a lot to think about now. This is a real you didn't know moment, because I now have way more to think about.
Another thing to consider is, again, coming back to the how naturalistic versus how stylistic. Have you considered green screen?
We haven't. That's actually a really good point. I have not considered green screen at all.
Particularly if you want to go real kind of stylistic.
You know what? One of the artists in the band, they either were like, oh, we should try like kind of funky looking green screen or painted backgrounds, which was just such a wild and zany idea that I was kind of like, no. And the director was like, no, do that. But it's definitely a bit more feasible. And I've seen a lot of music videos, especially lately, use green screen in very inventive ways. I'm not necessarily trying to hide the green screeniness of it all.
I mean, particularly if you can live with not having the side action, so to speak, overlap behind the band.
Mm-hmm.
You can shoot it in smaller sections. You shoot the band, then reset, and shoot what's going to be on the left of frame.
Yeah.
Reset, shoot what's going to be on the right of side. Frame.
Yet another reason for me to implore the director to watch this video. That is very intriguing. I will ask him about that, because I reckon there's a way to make that look really good. It gives me more control it gives us more control of the environment as well, because essentially after we've done that, we can just do whatever we want with it, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I think for me that the trick is to bring in enough props for the middle ground and the foreground.
Yeah, like you don't want it to look like
so that
the amazing bulk.
Yeah, so you don't have to fill in absolutely everything. And for me, I think my biggest recommendation would be to bring in flora, like whatever's going to be underground.
And like have those things at different distances, so there's no 2D effect to the whole thing. Wonderful. To close that off with a completely unrelated sidebar, I think that the Barbie movie did that quite recently. There are a few sequences where they have these wonderful sort of cardboard, cartoonish layouts and backgrounds. However, I think it's all practical. Watch the Barbie movie.
I think it must be, because I think I read a what's it called now? Like tweet? Is it still called a tweet, or is it called an
I'm
X,
inclined to call it a tweet from now on, because I'm not into
a
Twix. I'm not going to call it anything but a tweet. I'm inclined to not do anything Elon Musk tells me to do.
Xeet?
A zeet? Do you say zeet?
No, xeet.
Exeat?
Or cassette?
Exit?
Exeat?
Excrete. Yes, I saw an excrete.
So an excretion.
Yeah, I saw an excretion the other day.
Okay, yeah.
What was the excretion that you saw?
That supposedly Southern California had run out of pink.
Yeah, they did. They ran out of pink. There was a shortage because of the Barbie movie. I love that movie. I am not joking. I'm being completely honest with you when I say that cinematographically,
He was the DP.
I'm not sure, which is a real betrayal on my part, because I know that, like, you have to have at least a passing awareness of Barbenheimer, right? Like the Barbie Oppenheimer situation.
Again, in excretion.
Yeah. So Oppenheimer was Hoyt van Hoytema, and I'm not sure who shot Barbie. I'll look that up now, so I don't sound like a dunce.
I just looked it up. Rodrigo Prieto.
I think that you would prefer the way that Barbie is shot over Oppenheimer in terms of use of the space and craft generally, the coherence and cohesion of every single shot. It is a very well shot movie. It's not showy, it's just very well shot. Oppenheimer is a very good looking movie, but I think that you prefer the way Barbie was shot. The end.
Do you want to summarize?
Yeah, this is a pretty good you didn't know style episode, because I've come out of this with a lot more questions, not necessarily for you, but for my crew and myself, and a reminder that I need to get all my planning done. I asked you about wides. I asked you about how to pull them off. You said why. Why a wide? Why a wide? What is a wide? We discussed that for a while. It's been kind of nice to talk about what defines a wide shot and what the range is, given that it seems like the most nebulous shot size of all of them, which it's definitely the most poorly defined. It's just head to toe with a bit of safe room around the person. It's sort of, where does that end? Where does that start? What am I putting in the wide? What's the scale? How do you scale? Exponentially is the answer to that question. That was an awkward way of delivering that. I'm sorry. You've reminded me that I have to scale vertically, especially if I'm using a tilted source, like one that's tilting downwards. That is the difference between a couple C-stands and a crane. You reminded me that if I'm shooting outside, I might be using the sun as a backlight. And then after saying that, you've also told me that the sun is a bit of an evil backlight because now I need to compensate and fight against 22,000 footcandles?
Yeah. Ish.
The overall answer to this is a wide is very, very challenging and there's more to think about. But you can...
I think that's probably for me the big thing to be aware of and take away for beginners is that challenges scale exponentially with increase in shot size.
That's actually wow. That's great. I'll take that to my grave. The challenges scale exponentially. Not just the lights, not just the amount of space you have to deal with, but just the challenges generally. If there is a challenge in a shot, it gets more challenging exponentially the larger your shot is. I like that.
So, what are some strategies then?
Yeah. The strategy that I'm gleaning from all of this is that I will just need to plan, coordinate, and make concessions. Concede some things to the logistical abyss. Think about what I want to include, why it's necessary. Everything in this wide shot is subject to scrutiny and change because its presence in the shot will make it more challenging. I need to make sure that I am ready for every single challenge. I almost need to kind of dissect these shots into individual challenges. How am I going to light that end of the room? How am I going to light the subject? How much sky can we see? What's happening in the background? How do I light that? How are they going to move? Can they move in front of the camera? Can they overlap? My strategy at the moment is to dissect the shot and turn it into a bunch of individual challenges and see if I can face them, I think.
Wow, I think this is maybe the first time when I've asked a student or former student a question and I've gotten a more general answer where I was looking for a more specific answer.
What?
I know. I feel a bit like...
You feel a bit lost.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to
we're gonna finish this episode and you're gonna turn the screen up. Hey, see you, Ethan, good recording today. You're gonna turn it off and just be like, for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think this is one where you can actually use some rule of thumb, and that's like backlight with the sun and big bands in front.
Bob Richardson style. Okay. Dissect Bob Richardson is the rule of thumb.
So you got two things to test. I would recommend testing on dull scale, using the sun as backlight, and then trying to figure out on what scale, like how big bounces are you going to need, and then like imagine how you do in the scale that in real life. Okay,
that's going to be a shame.
So that's
socially for me. That's going to be a shame because I've got a terrace style balcony, which means I rarely have access to direct sunlight. However, meaning this may have to be a go outside on the street with a Barbie and a Ken and play around in front of the scary construction workers that are building a house next to me. Yeah. Number 2?
And green screen.
Yes. Okay, I will...
Both in terms of vernacular and making a style work, and in terms of what I think of as stitching multiple green screen setup to get the width of shot.
Skinching? What did you say?
Stitching. As in shooting the central portion with the band, reset, shooting the left-hand side of the frame action, reset, shooting the right-hand side of the, and then stitching side by side in the composite.
I can test that on dull scale as well, as it happens, which is nice because I want my little dull scale green screen.
I think you eventually do want to test that full scale as well. Okay. Just because you need to work out like how much room do you need for choreography. And if there is a freebie to give away for green screen, distance is your friend here. The more distance you can give yourself between the screen and the performer, the better.
Okay. The rule of thumb is that Bob Richardson style thing. That's so helpful. You have no idea how much that's altered the way that I'm going to shoot.
We have covered this in this podcast.
Yeah, I knew that. And
As in, do you remember Ridley Scott and the Duellists?
yeah, we talked about. See, what I remember from that one was us talking about graduating NDs. My selective memory evidently eliminated the most important part of that conversation.
But that was mostly about consistency and lighting continuity,
Yes.
right? And what was the conclusion with the lighting continuity?
It doesn't matter as much as emotional continuity.
And what was the evidence in the images?
The Duelists is wildly inconsistent in terms of lighting.
No, they are very consistent, particularly in the singles, in the medium close-ups and
But
close-ups.
the position of the sun
Go on,
isn't consistent.
go on.
It's coming back to me very slowly, and I'm worried it's going to be like a
They're both backlit.
right.
Backlight.
Sorry, yeah, weren't they backlit in the singles and not in the
When they're
wide?
supposed to be looking at each other.
They're both backlit.
So the consistent part is that they both have
Oh,
backlight,
okay, all
but
right.
there's no lighting continuity because they shouldn't both have
Because it's
backlight
impossible.
they're looking at each
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's two suns. It's Tatooine. Okay, Ethan needs to do his bi-monthly You Didn't Know rewatch very soon.
You completely set yourself up and you completely did not pay off your own setup.
I'm not following.
As in, you're talking about your own rewatch golden opportunity.
My ability to read subtext is very poor at the moment for some reason.
And so should you, dear audience.
Oh, you guys should all go watch You Didn't Know from the start to the end, like reading a book cover to cover.
And some still don't know.
Yeah. One of us has a brain. That's the entire concept of this show, is that one of us is very, very dumb and the other is very smart. I'm still trying to figure it out.
What are you accusing
I'm
me
still
of?
trying to figure it out.
What are these baseless
What
accusations?
is, I'm going to indict you. That's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, I think we've beaten that dead equine.
See you next week.
See you then.
That was addressed to the viewer. See you next week. I will cut